Sitting on a corner next to the local diner, Dalton had overheard the waitress conversation by pure chance. Moved by her inability to buy even something as small as baby formula, he knew he had to do something. So after getting a rather large donation from a stranger, he had to share it with her. However, giving her the money resulted in something he had never anticipated. When the police arrived after his good deed, they were quick to cuff him as they stated he has a big problem. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Dalton's life had always been one of struggle. Even before the moment that he had truly become homeless, he faced a lifetime of hardships. Regardless of it all, he still believed in the kindness and goodness of others. It was what drove him and what would eventually be his downfall. And it had all started with him overhearing a young woman. He had been sitting outside holding up a sign asking for someone to get him or his dog some food if they had any to spare. The waitress and her co-worker had been outside during their break. He hadn't wanted to eavesdrop but heard their conversation regardless. "I won't make it until the end of the month. I don't even have enough to buy baby formula. I don't know what to do, Stacy," the girl had said, her voice low, yet not low enough to go unnoticed by Dalton. He felt a pang in his chest at the notion of her not even having enough money to care for her child. There must be something he could do. Though Dalton didn't have children of his own, he did know the pain of not even being able to feed his dog. However, how could Dalton even help her? He didn't have a penny to his name and lived by the grace and donations of others. A man stood before him, his face slightly obscured by a hat, as he handed him something. It was a $50 bill. Dalton's eyes widened at the money. "Thank you," he stammered, and the man gave him a nod. "Buy yourself and the dog some food," he stated before he raised his hat slightly and walked off again. Dalton was shocked but knew that for a moment he could help others due to that fine man's generosity. He had no idea how much trouble it would give him. He told his dog, Jelly, to stay, which she promptly did. He could probably ask the waitress to exchange the money so he could gift the larger portion of the money to her toward her baby formula while still getting some food for Jelly. The staff was eyeing him warily as he neared their counter, but Dalton wasn't bothered by it. He decided to simply put a smile on his face as he approached the waitress, who he knew had struggled. "I'm sorry to bother you, miss, but I have a question to ask you." The young woman looked at him, confusion clear on her face. "I didn't mean to overhear your conversation from earlier, but I did, and I want to help." The waitress' eyes grew wide at Dalton's proclamation. She could hardly believe it. "That is so kind of you, sir, but I can't accept it," she said, but Dalton wouldn't simply let her decline the money. "Miss, you are just being polite, declining the money that I want to offer you. You are in need for baby formula. I understand the pain of not being able to provide for something that is reliant on you." He looked at Jelly staying put outside of the diner. "Please don't decline my help. I agree that I cannot give you everything I've got, but I do want to share it." She looked even more confused now. "Share it?" she asked, and Dalton nodded. "Yes, I got $50, but I also need to feed myself and my dog. So could you maybe exchange it and give me $20 back? You can keep the remaining $30 for the baby formula and yourself." Hearing him say those words almost brought the woman to tears as she nodded and hugged Dalton. The two broke off their hug, and Dalton gave her the money to exchange it for different bills. "Wait here a moment, and I will be right back." Dalton had decided to take a seat as he waited for the waitress to return with his portion of the money. He noticed sirens stopping in front of the diner. Dalton was wondering what happened when the police suddenly barged into the diner. It was then that he saw the waitress stand up. He immediately stood up, thinking he was getting his portion of the money, but she did something he never expected. "Officer, it is him," she said as she pointed toward Dalton. Dalton stopped in his tracks as he froze in place. His brows furrowed, not understanding what he had done. The officers immediately grabbed him. "You have a big problem," the guy said, confusing Dalton even more. "I didn't do anything wrong," he murmured, his voice a mix of confusion and fear, but the officers didn't respond. Dalton was led to the police cruiser, his mind racing with unanswered questions. Dalton recounted his story, from receiving the bill to his decision to help the waitress. His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. "I just wanted to help someone in need," he explained, hoping his sincerity would shine through. The officer listened, and his expression unreadable. "It's about the money you tried to give away," the officer finally said. "It's counterfeit." Dalton's eyes widened in disbelief. He felt a mixture of shock and betrayal, wondering who the man who gave him the bill really was. Dalton's voice was firm, but coupled with a mixture of confusion and indignation. "I swear I had no idea it was counterfeit, he asserted, meeting the officer's gaze directly. He remembered a sense of quiet generosity, an unassuming presence. He didn't seem like he wanted attention. Dalton explained, just walked up, handed me the money, and left. His mind grappled with the possibility. Was this man aware that the money was fake? The officers decided to review the diner surveillance footage, hoping it might shed light on the identity of the mysterious donor. Dalton watched anxiously as they played the tapes, his heart racing with the possibility that this footage could prove his innocence. Despite the man's obscured face, the footage corroborated Dalton's story. It showed the brief interaction, the man handing something to Dalton and walking away. The police, having concluded that the evidence against Dalton was insufficient, decided to release him. As the handcuffs were removed, a wave of relief washed over Dalton. The sunlight felt brighter, the air fresher, but his heart was heavy with the knowledge of what had transpired. As Dalton made his way back through the streets he knew so well, he noticed the varied reactions of those he passed. Back at the diner a few days later, Dalton encountered the waitress. She approached him with a hesitant step, her expression apologetic. "I'm really sorry about what happened," she began, her voice quivering slightly. "I never wanted you to get into trouble." Dalton could see the sincerity in her eyes, the genuine regret for the role she had inadvertently played in his wrongful arrest. Dalton and the waitress took a moment to sit together, sharing their experiences. As they talked, a mutual understanding emerged. As they were talking, Dalton's gaze drifted to the window, where he saw a familiar figure passing by the man who had given him the counterfeit bill. Without hesitation, Dalton excused himself and rushed outside, calling out to the nearby police officers. He pointed out the man, explaining that he was the one who had given him the fake $50 bill. The officers reacted swiftly, moving to apprehend the man as Dalton watched, a mix of relief and anticipation surging through him. The officers conducted a swift but thorough search of the suspect, revealing several more counterfeit bills tucked away in his pockets. The man's face fell as he was caught red-handed, and there was a collective sigh of relief from the onlookers. For Dalton, it was more than just the arrest of a criminal. It symbolized a turn of justice, a rectification of the wrongs he had endured. As the police car drove away with the suspect, Dalton felt a profound sense of relief and vindication. The weight of the false accusation lifted from his shoulders. In the days that followed, the police investigation into the apprehended man revealed a deeper network of criminal activities involving counterfeit money. The truth had unraveled, and with it, Dalton's name was cleared. He was no longer just a homeless man caught in a bad situation. He was a key figure in bringing down a criminal operation. The police delved deeper into their investigation, unraveling a web of deceit and criminality linked to the apprehended man. It turned out he was part of a larger counterfeit ring that had been circulating fake bills in small businesses across the city. With the unfolding of the investigation, it became unequivocally clear that Dalton had been an unwitting pawn in the counterfeit ring's activities. Well, the evidence absolved him of any intentional wrongdoing, finally proving his innocence. News of Dalton's vindication spread, and the community's perception of him shifted from one of skepticism to sympathy and understanding. In a heartwarming turn of events, the local community, including the staff and patrons of the diner, began to show their support for Dalton. People who had once eyed him with suspicion now offered kind words and assistance. The waitress, in particular, became an advocate for Dalton, sharing his story and helping to change the narrative about him in the community. With his name cleared and the community's support, Dalton began to rebuild his life. The kindness of strangers, including the man who had cared for Jelly, paved the way for new opportunities. Dalton found a small job and, with the community's help, secured a more stable living situation. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with hope and the promise of a better future.